Go.
Hello, my name is Sean Minning. I am one of the North Region Materials Managers at the University of Colorado Health. Today I'm going to explain a little bit about some of the basics about the Kanban methodology and how you will interact with it, as well as some of the benefits of going to a Kanban methodology for inventory practices. First of all, Kanban came out of, it's a basic lean principle, came out of Toyota. It's been around for 70 years plus. So what they wanted to do was create an environment where you take some of the physical counting away to create efficiencies. So in most situations that you come to from an inventory standpoint, you will see folks actually physically counting supplies when they're doing the inventory piece. Toyota discovered that they could actually just put physical triggers in and reduce or eliminate any unnecessary counting, thus gaining efficiencies. A good example of that is when we converted to Kanban in the North region, we had about a 35% efficiency gain from a scanning or inventory practice or inventorying standpoint. We've also seen benefits in product rotation as well as utilization. So we're going to start with how you use Kanban from an end user standpoint, and then we'll go to how you actually inventory Kanban. So as an end user, one of the things that we recognize that's really, really important is our visual cues. Visual cues work really, really well for a customer, and those can be a number of things, and we went with a few things. First of all, we tried to categorize, or we do try to categorize as much as possible, and we indicate those categories by color. That can be the color of the bin, which in this instance it does not apply. It can be a tag, it can be anything that you would like it to be. It can be a dot, although dots are really a little bit more confusing and cumbersome as far as having to adhere dots to things. You can even spell it out for your customer if you want to. The second piece that we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that the end user always knew in common name what that supply was. And so we always work with the end users to create secondary labels that are user-friendly. It really needs to be user-friendly because the labels that come through from Lawson don't actually provide adequate information for the end user to truly understand what the supply is 100% of the time. And they really only serve the function of scanning. All right, so as an end user, you would come in, you would identify your product. Now in a Kanban situation, you have one bin, or you can have two bins with a physical split in it, and you have two positions from within that bin. In a front to back scenario, your pull first location is in the front and your safety stock is in the back. The entire bin is the sum total of your max par. And as an end user, what you would do is you would identify that you wanted this particular tape. You would come in, if it was in the front, you would pull your product and go. Should you come to a situation where there's no product in the front, it doesn't mean anything to you if you're using it. All that means is that you need to pull the product from the back slot or the back of the bin and go ahead and proceed to what it is that you need, whether you're stocking carts or taking care of a patient. What we do ask is that you never, if your use first location is empty, we ask that you never take the product from the back and move it to the front. That's going to come into play when you do your inventory piece, and it is critical that you do not do that. That you never pull your product from the back and move it to the front. You will come to situations, and this is an example, although the shelf is empty, where you can't do front to back. You actually have to do side to side in a situation like fluids. In anesthesia situations, circuits would be a perfect example. It would be really, really difficult to actually do a front to back situation. So we actually do side by side. We always indicate which is your use first and your backup. And in this scenario, you would go to the shelf and you would pull from the use first until it's completely depleted front to back, and then you would move on to your safety stock. The problem with this scenario is that it becomes very, very tempting to start to pull from both sides when you're in a hurry. It's also really tempting to pull from the safety stock side if it becomes too hard for you to reach in the back. It is imperative that you follow the rule. You go ahead and you deplete one side before you move over here. Again, this will play into how the technician who is doing the part replenishment aspect interacts with the inventory, and you lose efficiencies if you're actually pulling from both sides. Those are the two primary schools of thought when we're doing front to back and side to side. The other thing is that in our situations, and in a lot of Kanban situations that we've encountered, there's always a return bin. We do a return bin because we're really asking for the end user to not be helpful. That sounds a little odd, but the biggest reason behind that is it would be really easy if they came back and they were trying to be helpful and they said, you know what, I'm going to put this product back where I pulled it. Well, they could actually end up sabotaging the inventory piece again, or the par replenishment piece again, simply by taking this and putting it in the front of the bin. The reason would be is that if the back of the bin is empty, there's no more product, this is the last of the product up here, you drop that in the front. When the technician comes in to replenish, to actually inventory, they're no longer pulling bins out. They're looking for empty holes in the front slot. And by putting this in the front slot and having product empty in the back of the bin, you've created a stock out situation because they're not going to pull the bin out. So we use the return bin, and as a part of the replenishment piece, we actually come to this. And what we will do as technicians is we will go through the return bin and see what the opportunity is to return the product. Obviously that reduces overstock and puts product back on the shelf so the end user has it readily available and they don't have to pull through a little bit of a bin here. Those are the basics of how you would use a Kanban inventory. Now as a technician, Kanban, you can use paper, you can use a scanner, you can use whatever widget you want to, and actually Kanban can be anything that can be divided in half. It would be a little odd to use like a margarine container or anything like that, but you really actually could use like Tupperware containers if you really needed to. We went with a blend. We go with a blend of options here in the North region, where space is a premium. We actually will go with a basket storage scenario because of the density that we can actually obtain using it. In other applications, we go with our favorite, which is a simple wire with blue acro bins that can be easily divided. Now with that said, as a replenishment piece, if I was the technician coming in, the very, very first thing that I would do from a scanning, actually the scanning aspect, is I would go to that return bin and find all of my opportunities where I could return product. It's going to reduce the number of lines potentially that I'm going to be scanning. And again, put the product where it needs to be so the end user doesn't have to go through a junk drawer. As I'm going through, I start with whatever my methodology is, and what I got to really, really stress is that when you start using this, yes, it really is that easy. If you grew up in an environment where you're actually sitting there and counting and looking at reorder points and things like that, you go to this methodology and you simply say, why didn't we do this years ago? Because all I'm doing as a technician is I'm physically just looking for empty holes. And so just by a quick glance, going basket to basket, I've got nothing in this row. Now, in a traditional environment, I would actually be pulling this out, reading my label, trying to figure out whether I needed to reorder it, put my number in, go. I come to the second row here, and I actually have an empty slot. So I have my scanner, I'm going to scan that front barcode, right? And for what we needed to do is we actually needed to, you do have to, with the handheld, you do have to physically type a number in to tell it that it's time to reorder. And so at half, which is generally what we do with this, at half we put the number on there, and then we actually take this exact same label and put a 0 on the back. You should know that if the back is empty, you're going to scan 0, but you really want to put those visual cues in for the technician. And so I would just scan this. I have my 3 on here because that's exactly half of what my max par is. And and I'm going to go. I'm not going to pull this product forward. I'm going to leave it in the back. Another reason for this would be if you go on back order. Generally speaking, we go with a fill-kill methodology in supply chain, which means if I scan this and our vendor can't supply it, there's the potential that they're going to kill the line. They kill that line, there's going to be no back orders, nobody's going to know that it's on order. And so really, by keeping that product in the back and it being like a logical unit of measure or a LUM, you're going to scan this thing, it's not going to come, and it'll actually trigger it the next day, so you continue to scan it until the product is actually replenished in the bin. So that was, you would just go through row by row, following the same practices. Generally speaking, we do not pull a bin out if the front slot is open, which is why it's imperative that the end user follows those rules. When we come to a side-by-side situation, because the world isn't perfect, and I wish we could get everybody there with 100% compliance from a user standpoint, you're going to be fighting those human temptations to pull from both sides. Now, one of the things that we do upon put away is when we can, is we actually will push the safety stock row back a little bit to encourage the end user to actually use the left side first, because this is a little further back, and psychologically it causes them to go to the easiest location. So when you're coming into this situation, we call it right sizing the right side, meaning unfortunately you actually have to verify that your number is where it is. Again, your total max power on this is an 8. Your safety stock, your use first slot would be 4, and your safety stock would be 4. We split it right down the middle. It makes it really, really easy and a lot less counting upon put away. And so I'm just going to make sure that I have 4 bottles on the right side. As long as I've got 4 bottles on the right side, then I can see whether I need to reorder. There are situations where folks will actually pull from this, they get confused, this one's full. And so what I would then do is I would put this product over here. It's a lot of motion, unfortunately, but it's necessary. Pull my product forward, and in this case, I still don't need to reorder. There are times when you actually make it right, and you do that exact same thing, and you move the product over where it'll actually show you that you're at your trigger. So it's called right sizing the right side. It's, I guess, the most creative way we could describe it for folks. Excuse me. I'm going to flush through my entire inventory. As I go along, some of the other things that I personally teach, box tops are a key one here. So in this situation right here, if I was scanning this, I would actually just take the product out of the box. All right, in most instances, you should be taking the product out of the box anyways upon replenishment, but that doesn't always happen. So as part of one of your good practices, you're going to want to straighten as much as as little as possible, but you do want to try to make it more efficient for the end user. Dumping sometimes is adequate, however you want to think it through, because if you start to commingle lot numbers and you get into a recall situation, it's going to make a lot more work for you, and you're going to have to go through each one of these to try to figure out whether the affected lot is there. So I go through, I do everything I need to do, whatever your rules are as far as cleaning. But again, you do not ever want to pull a bin out if the front of the bin is full or actually has product in it. Now, with replenishment, the actual replenishment piece, one of the other really key benefits to this is product rotation. And so what I would do, let's say for example, this triggered, I ordered it, and it was time for me to fill this. And this was the situation that I came to. I have my brand new box of auto guards here. I come to the location. Like I said, I prefer to take it out of the box. Makes it a little bit easier from a use standpoint. And at this point in time, I'm going to take my safety stock, and I'm going to move it forward. I've now rotated the product. I'm going to put my newest lot or newest product in the back. I've